Previously. Hey everybody, and welcome to the 200th episode of Terraria. Now, I originally intended to end this series on 200, but I'm not going to. We still have stuff yet to accomplish. Now, you may remember, other than the pyramid, we built some stuff over here, and I've been back and I've dolled them up a little bit, and in preparation for getting the pyramid built, I found some treasure. Now, let's go down and just have a quick look at this. I managed to find some water walking boots, which can be upgraded, but I don't think we're ever going to need them, but they might be worth looking into. I found a living wood wand, which is something I thought I had, but I never did. I had a leaf wand, I was getting confused, which is handy because I do need this in the future. And more importantly, we found 2 parts to the Eskimo outfit. Look at that. I think we needed the pants, didn't we, to complete that one outfit, so we're going to finish that up straight away, and then that is wiped off. There it is, look. One thing left to do, and it is the other Eskimo outfit, so we just need shirt and pants. So let's take a very brief walk over, and I'm going to quickly show off what I did off camera. Don't worry, we'll get to the 200th episode special celebration soon. Now, I got my shoes on, so this is not quite a relaxing walk, it's quite a speedy one. Up and over, up and over a bit more. And it should be right around here. Oh wait, I should have walked to the Fortress of the Damned. I'm an idiot. So anyway, the basic thing I've done here is I've extended the tunnel the full length of the way up to the entrance of here, look, with the beams and with all of this. It seems strange to have the tunnel end here and then have this open cavernous area. I figure, why not just connect it all up? And I've made the water look quite cool too, and the stalactites are more stalactitey, I guess you could say, looking at that. This took a fair bit of effort, but I'm happy with how it looks, and that's all improved. And the other area has now finally become overgrown with moss, and I attached underneath a star in a bottle to add a nice little glow effect, a nice magical style effect. Right, so let's head home. Was there anything else I wanted to show you down here? These I found in the other world, because when I was building the pyramid, I primarily wanted to light this with sconces, which are hanging from many different areas, but they can only be found in dungeons, and the dungeon in this world has been cleared out, so I had to create about 4 or 5 other worlds and kill the Skeletron, just to get access to the dungeon so I could get in there and dig up sconces. And along the way I found other treasure. Right, so let's walk over to the pyramid, because I've improved it slightly. I've added some more banners. I added some golden tables that the honey pours onto. It looks kind of cool. Just a basic few little changes, and then I'll get on with the 200th special celebration? Something's gonna happen. Fly across to the desert, get out of it, vulture. You're not welcome around here. This is quite a ways away, and here it is looking all impressive in its glory. Now, one thing I'm not too happy about are these obsidian bricks. I think they're dynamic in that, you see how occasionally they'll have these little red dots on them, like evil eyes? I spent ages making sure they didn't have red dots. I wanted them to be pure black, but when I loaded up to do stuff, they were back with red, and they keep changing, so there's no point in me setting them to be pure black, because they'll change every single time, and there's nothing I can do about that. So just imagine they're all black. Now, I added in these snake banners, because I had the omega banners here, but I only had 4, 2 on each side, and it just seemed a bit empty up here. I would have liked maybe another one up here, but beggars can't be choosers. Get out of it, vulture, I already warned you. Now, we have cobwebs all over, and these obelisks shouldn't be here. Go away, you and you. Did somebody die? My slumber is over. What's all this about? There's more on this side. The end is here. What's going on? The Pharaoh's tomb has gone. It's been replaced with sand, and there's some bandages. Is he underneath? This is an intricate sarcophagus. What's going on? Well, it seems the Pharaoh's curse has come true and the apocalypse is upon us. But this is my world. And if anyone's going to destroy this world, it's going to be me. And I'm going to do it in style. So today is a Let's Build style celebration episode. And I'm going to design the end of the world in the style of 3 meteors plummeting towards the planet. Each meteor containing a different type of evil biome. The main meteor will be comprised of crimson, a smaller one of hallow, and an even smaller one of corruption, mixed in with bits of meteor rock as and where necessary. Now, let me tell you something. This was a royal pain for many reasons, not least of which are the wyverns that were constantly attacking me. I died a total of 5 times during this build from the wyverns. Remind me to never build anything in the sky ever again, because that sucks. Secondly, the fact that meteors are inherently, kind of round, and you saw how much trouble I had doing the circle at the top of the pyramid. Now I had to do 3 of them, of different sizes, and that took a lot longer than I expected. And then of course, because I'm so high up, I'm essentially in space, and it's just so dark. I put torches down when I could, and I drank night owl potions to enhance the light, but overall it will seem a little dark. And finally, with these meteors, what I decided to do, much like the pyramid was based kind of on the Stargate chevron, I decided to base the meteor on something from one of my favourite games. In fact, my favourite game. Now, I'll probably receive a lot of flack for this because this game receives equally as much hate as it does love, and that game is Final Fantasy VII, and the logo on the box for that is the meteor with a trail style coming off of it with a hole in the centre. So I've tried to mirror that with this build. And here we are back at the pyramid on top of the stargazer style Eye of Ra. I guess you'd say it was an ancient telescope that spotted these meteors so long ago. Now the meteors of course being the Crimson Meteor, the Hallowed Meteor and the Corruption Meteor up there. I'm happy with it. The two smaller solid meteorites, I destroyed them after I finished recording because I just don't like how they look. Well, that is going to do it for this Let's Build. I know it's not a huge celebration like Party Episode 100, but I want to do something a little different. And, well, I guess that's it. Now, coming up tomorrow, well, so much to do, because today there was a patch for Terraria that has added even more stuff, so we need to do that. Yes, as well as complete off a few of our original things. So we've got a lot to do ahead of us. A few more Let's Builds. I'm going to space them out now with 2 Let's Builds in a row. Let's get a few more regular episodes in. For now though, goodbye.